Go ahead.
Hey, everybody at PlayOnCon. I hope you are mostly recovered from last night. And I say mostly recovered because you've already recovered. You didn't have a good enough time at PlayOnCon last night. We're very sorry we're not there to do this session in person. James had planned to bring his laptop to the pool and show everybody how to do Unity coding in the pool. He had a 3-monitor setup especially for that, all up on a Pegasus, Unicorn, and LOL float. But sorry, our kids aren't vaccinated, so we can't be there. But we are there in spirit. And by spirits, I don't just mean all the whiskey you all consumed last night. James is Dr. Unity. He is an expert on Unity 3D. A number of games out for this now. And believe it or not, he was using Unity before most people knew it existed, back when it was only available on the Mac. Back in the MySpace days. Now, I will have another stream tonight, not PlayOnCon related, at 8 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Central. I expect you all to definitely not be in the mood to watch me play a strategy game, but I will be showing off Emperor the Fading Sun's middle game progress and to talk about designing for the middle part of a strategy game. So again, you can join me again at 8 p.m. If you're so inebriated you can't move, people can just put you in front of your monitor and watch it. But with that, let me turn it over to James to finish introducing himself. And if you have questions, please ask them in the chat. James, take it away.
Hello, everybody. Those who have known me for a while, my name is James Simpson, aka Dr. Unity, and owner of Cell Block Studios. Yes, I have been using Unity for quite some time. When I was at MySpace, we were looking for a different engine besides Flash to build our games, since there was this small startup company called Facebook, and we were afraid that they were going to be dominant. So they decided to say, build a bunch of games on our platforms to keep people engaged. During my research, I found something called Unity that was for Mac. And I got it and fell in love with it because I've been designing games and building games for a very long time. And one of the biggest problems I always had was I've always had to go through all these different pieces to put a world together. And Unity, I just fell in love with it. And it's one of those engines I use every single day. Now, enough about me. So one of the things I was going to try and show is I'm trying to show the basic concepts of Unity, not getting into specific things, like building an entire full-fledged game, but mainly how to use the interface. And once you start learning how to use the interface, you can figure out why I also fell in love with it, and you can start adding upon that. So, for example, there's something called a Unity Hub. Now, with the Unity Hub, this allows you to run many different versions of Unity. In this case, I used to have a desktop full of all these icons for every single version of Unity as I was building them. But Unity Hub lets you build a brand new project and select which one we want to do. So in this case, I'm going to be using 2020.3.13 F1. So the way Unity works recently is they have what's called an LTS version. And the LTS version, which stands for long-term support of Unity, is in the 2020 is the 0.3. The reason for that is they may be adding and removing features, which you will notice in something I'll go over here in a moment, and they may decide during the production that for whatever reason, whether stability issues or incorporating of things, they decided not to put it in the final release. So I never use any version of Unity unless it's an LTS version, because therefore I know as they roll out new versions, it would only be bug fixes. So in this case, I've launched Unity Hub 2.4.4, and I'm going to choose a 3D project. I'm going to name this project Pleco Master. I'm going to put it in my source directory. I'm going to say create. So the Unity splash screen will show. It will then now open and create a new project based upon those settings that I have on there. Okay, now of course it moved on the wrong screen. I'm running this on a very low resolution so everyone can see. So I'm running this at like 1280 by 720. So everything's really tiny for me. So one of the first things I do when I get into Unity, you have the ability to change your layout. I personally like to see everything at one time. So I go over here to layout, and I choose layout, and I choose a 2x3. So what does that do? The way Unity works is these are broken up into panels. Okay, so a scene panel, you can notice here by this little tab, a scene panel basically allows you to see everything that's in the scene. Think of a scene like a stage of a play. You may have things in the background, you may have things in the backstage. It's everything that's going to be basically in the world that you're going to need to be able to see. This scene view does a one-to-one relation to what's called the hierarchy here. So this is a view of the actual objects basically in list form that are represented in the scene. If I click on main camera, you will see that it showed me the main camera location. If I say directional light, it will show me the directional light. So those two things are in the scene. The game view. The game panel here shows you what's being displayed through a camera. You can choose between different displays, but in this case, I have one camera. This camera is everything that's going to be rendered in this fulcrum right here. So in this box. Okay, so if something is too far out, let me change this to 10, for example. So I just changed the fulcrum to 10, so it will not. It will only go up to that point, but not anything further. So as far as I change this over, I go further. Okay. Now over here in the project, I personally like to see everything in one list. I just like list. I don't like these little tab formats and little icons and everything because I know what I'm looking for. So I'm going to right click on this project and say one column layout. Okay. So this asset folder, and that's what it is. It's a direct relation to your file structure, whether you're using a Mac or whether you're using Windows. If you right click onto this, since I'm on Windows, it'll say Show in Explorer, and you will see this is the asset directory. Inside this asset directory is something called scenes. If I move the scenes over, you will see if I have scenes. If I were to create a file inside here, and I just said new, and I said hello world, I have a rich text format. I come over here, you'll see it created in here. If I delete that from here, it will also delete it from that folder, so it's no longer there. Okay. The inspector. This is the saving grace of what I like about with Unity. Other engines have something of this nature. Unreal, for example, has it. But when I started out, this was just a better platform for creating code than like the Unreal Engine. So with the main camera selected, you have this is called a game object or GO, but a lot of people just say game object because that's what it is. Inside the game object, you have a bunch of what's called components attached to this game object. So think of the game object as a container, an empty container that has nothing but one thing in it. In this case, it's called a transform. So if I were to right-click here and I say create empty, and there it is, my game object, you will see it has a transform component. This gives you the position, rotation, and scale of this game object. So if we go back to main camera, you'll see it also has a transform component. It also has a camera component, and it also has an audio listener. So if I want to add something to a component, I just click add component, and I have a whole list of things I could inherently add into these containers. So if I want to add a mesh, and I want to say a mesh renderer, I can now have a mesh renderer. Okay. So this is how components work. So you can also remove components too. So we have a main camera, which has a camera and audio listener. We have a directional light, which has a light component and a transform. Okay. Now that we have a basic understanding of how the layout looks, let's go ahead and create something that we can see in our camera. So Unity gives you multiple ways to create things in our scene. We can go up here to Game Object, create a 3D object, and create a cube. And you will see there is my cube. Now, because I have my camera, and I moved my camera around, my viewport around in the scene view, when I created this object, it created it in a position that was in the middle. Had I had a fresh, brand new one of Unity, this probably would have been 0, 0, 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over here and click Reset, and that's going to center it in the world. In this case, that box. So if I now click on my main camera, there is my main camera, and it is now just like that. So I am seeing the main camera as it was displayed, showing this box. I'm going to take this cube, and I'm going to scale it 10 wide and 10 Z, or Z. So what I have done is I've just basically made a little ground for me to go on. Okay, let's confirm something with my camera. Let's make sure I got, oh, there we go. Yes. So that's what I was mentioning earlier to you. As you see, we'll do it this way. So I got my cube. I'm going to call this floor. The other way to create a game object inside Unity is to right-click in your hierarchy area, click 3D object. In this case, I'm going to create a sphere. So once again, it's going to go into the middle of my screen. So I'm going to go ahead and reset this, and it puts it inside my cube. And since it has a Y of 1, and my cube has a Y of 1, it's completely hidden. So I'm going to change my sphere. I'm going to pull this up a little bit, and you will see there's my sphere. I'm going to call this ball. So now I have a ball and a floor. Okay? Now, looking through my camera view, well, showing you earlier, if I hold down far and I start bringing this back, you will see, pay attention to this right here and then this right here. As I bring this back, even though the scene view still contains the actual game object, the camera, which does the rendering of what you're seeing, is being manipulated. In this case, I'm bringing it back and farther. So I want to go, let's just say 100 out. Okay. In Unity, things are called units. Think of a unit as around a meter in length. Okay, so with Unity, we have the ability to actually play kind of real time. So if we hit this play button right here, you're now running the experience. So everything that you have, all your components and your game objects and your physics and your lighting and your materials and the animations, all that is now being executed, okay, inside this one world environment. But as you see, nothing's happening. It's like, well, how do I know something's actually happening? Well, we're going to add something to our ball. So we're going to click on our ball, and I'm going to close some of these, and I'm going to click component. I'm going to type in rigid. So I'm going to add a rigid body. Okay, a rigid body allows you to basically add physics to that specific object. I'm adding it to my ball because I don't want to have rigid body on the floor. Why? If you'll notice, one of the things here says use gravity, and it's checkmarked by default. So now if I hit play, it fell. Well, that was massively exciting, but we did see something run, okay? And that was the important thing, is we saw something happen and when we were in run mode. So when I hit play, the physics executed, it made that game object fall to the floor. It's like, okay, well, I want to add something more to it. I want that to work like a ball. I want to bounce around a little bit. So I'm going to right click on here, create a folder. I'm going to say, physics materials. I'm going to right click here and create, and I'm looking for physics material right there. And then here, I'm going to call this bounce. So now that I have bounce, you'll see here, we have a bounciness set for 0. So I can here's the cool thing about Unity. So I got something in my project. I can literally click and drag with my left mouse button on the word bounce, drag it over, and plop it right on that sphere. So now when I click on ball, you will see that it has material now set for bounce. And if I were to change this name, to bouncy, click back on ball. Because it has a link to it, it is now referencing it what's in the project folder. And if we were to right click here, say show an Explorer or Finder, depending what you have, you will see you will have a bouncy material. Okay, so I have this set by default, and I hit play, and it fell. It's very nice. That's not what I want to do. I want to bounce. Well, what I could do is go over to this bouncy, change the bounciness to 1, and hit play. Now we have it slowly come down to a rest. If I were to set this to 5, you can't set it to 5. So if I set it to 0.5, okay, you'll see that it actually stopped bouncing faster. Okay, so what have I done here? If I went ahead and I created a floor and a ball, and I had the ball with the bouncing material on it, it's like, okay, well, that's all fun, but I wanted to do something more. Well, I can take the floor, I can click on these keys up here. This is pan, move, rotate, scale, rect tool, move, rotate, scale selected objects, and editor tool. I'm interested in rotate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and rotate it just like that. I would like to have about a negative 45 degree. Okay? Now my ball, which is right here, is still going to fall down. But watch what happens. And it rolls down. It's like, okay, well that's starting to kind of be something kind of cool. So what else can we do with this? So you can, with your last object selected, Control Z, and get back to where you just were. So I'm going to increase the size of this floor to make something a little larger. So what I can do, as I went over here before at my transform tool, I typed in a number 10. You can also put your mouse on this X and scale it just about how you feel. Okay, that might be a little big. Let's bring that down. Good. Now, one of the other things I want to do is I want to have something that the ball can collide with besides the floor. I would like to have this thing rotating from a 45 or if not higher angle and have it actually bounce into things. So I can go to Create Object, 3D Objects, Cylinder. So now I have a cylinder. Once again, it's going to need to be reset. And there it is right there. So I'm going to take my cylinder. And this was a cool feature that I discovered late in my Unity training. So when you click on something, you have the move tool selected. You actually have these 3 axes. Well, that's pretty good. So I can move it this way, and this way, and this way. But sometimes I want to move it only on 2 axes. Well, it just so happens there's actually a little plane here. If I click and hold on this, it will move in the left and right and keep me on the platform that I want. So I can bring it down a little bit. I want to just a little bit to intersect. Okay, now I can move this around. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put it right about there. And I'm going to say, I'm going to call it a pillar. Actually, let's call it a peg. So now that I have the peg in there, I can create what's called a prefab. Usually when you're done with a game, you will have prefabs of just about everything in your in your scene. Prefabs are a way to have copies of an item inside your scene where if you change the prefab, all the items in your scene are updated. It's really easy to create a prefab once you have your item. You literally just drag and drop it into the folder and it's going to turn blue, which stands for prefab. So what do I mean by that? So if I double click right here, I am in the prefab viewer. Okay, you know you're in a prefab viewer because it shows you it blue with the word peg, which is what it is. Now if I add anything to this, okay, if I add a rigid body to this and I go back, you will notice that this got updated with a rigid body. If I went over here and I changed the name to whole. I would have to rename everything or use the old name. So I'm going to, in this case, use the old name. But you can have everything updated. Okay, so I did that for a reason. I want to have this peg, and I want to duplicate it a few times. So I'm going to hold down Control and hit D for David, or I can go here and say duplicate. And I want to duplicate this quite a few times. I'm kind of just evenly spacing them out. I mean, I could look over here and mathematically figure it out, but we're just eyeballing this for right now. Okay, so I have these right there, and I want to make sure that my ball will fit between all those pegs, and it looks like it will. So I'm going to go ahead and rename these just because I like keeping them kind of cleaned up. Okay, one of the other major concepts you should understand about Unity is the parent-child relationship. Right now, everything that's in my hierarchy here is in one giant world system. Okay? It's everything, the sample scene is the parent for everything. Well, I want to have each of these pegs in their own row. So I can now create an empty game object. I'll just zero this out right now. Row of pegs. And I'm going to move this row of pegs right there. And I'm going to grab all these pegs, drag and drop them into a row of pegs. Okay, now if I move the row of pegs, all the children that are associated with it move too. Okay, so now I can Control D, bring it down. Actually, let me just bring it down this way. I am purposely skipping an area, and you'll see why in just a brief moment. Okay, now that I've got this row of pegs, I'm going to choose another row of pegs, Control D, bring it down, and off-center it a little bit. I'm going to move it over there, and then take this last peg out of the equation. Okay, so we will say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 pegs, row of pegs 6. And then this will be a row of pegs 5. Okay, I'm going to go here, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, I'm going to do one more. Right about there, perfect. Okay, so now what I have is I have a floor with a bunch of pegs. Now, one of the things I need to do is I want to put sides on this, because I want my ball to navigate through this sea of pegs to get down to a bottom here. So I'm going to choose floor, I'm going to duplicate floor, and then I'm going to modify the Y so it's just the same height as the peg, and then bring back one of these dimensions. In this case, I'm going to do X. What I'm doing here is I'm building a wall. So this wall would fit right about there. Bring it up. And for me to moving around, I am holding down the Alt key, and when I hold down the Alt key, it does this pan view, and then is like a hand tool, so it can allow me to spin around. I should be able to change the height. Let's bring that down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to duplicate it again. Put it on the other side. That's about where I want it. Now I can take, I have a couple options here. I can Control D and just move this over here. And then I could rotate this by 90 degrees. bring it down here. Sets this on the same plane. Scale it down. So I'm just kind of eyeballing all this. It's like Unity is like fooling around with like digital clay. Okay, so now that I have all this items, we're going to say side wall, side, and then this will be bottom. I'm going to put all, we have the floor, and I'm going to put all this into the floor, along with all these pegs into the floor. Okay, so why did I do that? Because now I can take the floor, I can use the rotate tool, and I can rotate everything at one time. Because remember earlier when we had the floor rotated at negative 45 degrees and the ball went down it and bounced? We're basically doing the same thing. So now I'm going to put it down here, take my ball, and change the pivot. I'm sorry, bring my ball up, bring my ball back. I'm only doing this in the scene view. I'm not worried about the game view as of this second. Now everything fell off, which was actually kind of cool. The reason why, because I had in my prefab right here, the rigid body turned on. So let me go ahead and remove the component. Go back. So now you see balls bouncing all around. And it's going to fall into some area at the bottom. And that's how we want our game to actually work. Okay, and that basically gives you the number of points. So we can take our ball, and depending on where we put this, it should fall. Now in this case, it should fall always in the same spot. Hold on, let's confirm that. Okay, I have it resting right there. It's still rolling a little bit. If I hit stop, I hit play, it should be right around here. And it does. Perfect. So the reason why is the physics are exactly the same. There's no randomization in it, and I always have it start at the exact same location, which is why that happens this way. So one of the things we want to do now is we want to make little channels down here. What we want to do is we can take one of these sidewalls again, we can duplicate it, we can scale it down, bring it down. You hit F to actually zoom in. Oh, I gotta get really good with this. Hold on. I might have had too many pegs in there. Let's put one there, one there, one there, one there, and one there. Okay, so now I have basically channels for the balls to fall into. I can select all of them as a group, bring it down. Very good. Okay, now I've been doing this ad hoc, and I have not been doing any kind of scene maintenance. So the way Unity works is it tells you your name of your project, which scene you're in. A scene is a collection of everything that's inside your hierarchy. This is for PC, Mac, and Linux standalone. This is the version of Unity, and I'm currently using DirectX 11 instead of OpenGL. So one of the things I want to start doing before I get too far is actually go to File, Save As, and I'm going to go to Scene. I'm just going to call this Main. So you'll see the scene name change up here from Sample Scene, because when you start Unity, it gives you a sample scene to actually work with. I went ahead and saved it as Main, because that's where I want my program. I want to leave the sample scene alone. Okay, so now that I've got this kind of working, let's add some color to it. So over here in Assets, I'm going to say create a folder. I want to call this Materials. Right-clicking on the materials, I'm going to say Create Material, And I know I want this to be blue. So I click blue, and then I click on this white albedo right here, and I pick blue. And once again, just like we did with the physics material, you can literally click and drag from the project folder there to there. Now I have blue. So I'm going to go ahead and create another one. We're going to call this red. I'm going to go ahead and choose a red color. Drag red onto the sidewalls. Each object can have their own color. I'm going to zoom in a little bit. I'm going to change red, 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 and red. Lastly, remember we have all these pegs as a prefab. So what I could do is right click, create material, green. I'm going to choose some green. I'm going to go into my prefabs, click here, and now grab that green and put it right there. Look, they all got updated. So that's the power of a prefab. And then I click this arrow to go back. Now they're all green. Now the last one we're waiting for, missing, is the white ball. So we need something that's going to stand out. So let's just say yellow. So we'll go over here, choose a nice yellow, drag that yellow right on that ball. I'm going to take the ball, bring it back a little bit. I hit F to zoom in. I don't want it clipping through, but I want it to fall down and bounce. Okay. Okay, so there it is falling, and it should fall either in this chamber or this chamber. Let's see where it actually hits at. Oh, that's right, because I moved the ball. So that's where it fell into. Okay, so we have created a type of game where a person could move the ball. So the next we want to do is we want to do some kind of inputs. And we want to have a scoring system. So I'm going to right click here, create a folder, scripts, and you can use whatever IDE you use. I have been using Visual Studios or Visual Studios Code has been very good. Another one that I've been using lately is Rider by JetBrains. I've been very happy with it. It actually helps a lot with your coding. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and say create a C# script. I'm going to say player input. And I'm also going to make another script called Game Manager. That's not what I wanted because it's obviously used by the system. Okay, so we got a floor manager. So with the player input, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to move the ball using some arrow keys. So I'm going to double click on this. In this case, I'm going to launch Visual Studio 2017. Try to bring this over here. Let's try that again. Yay! Okay. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit. So in Unity, everything I showed you, like the camera component and the rigid body component and the transform component, think of them as all as individual scripts, okay? And they all have properties. So with these properties, you can have something called a public property that allows you to be able to see in the application the inspector. If I go over here and I click ball, this thing right here is the inspector. So all these is edit collider, is trigger, material, center. All this is a public property in that component. It's just a collection of scripts. So I'm going to go ahead and say public game object because I want to reference the game object, which is going to be the ball. Okay? So By default, when you create a script, you got your name that you created and what's called a mono behavior. Mono behavior has a whole bunch of functions that are already built into Unity that the system calls by its very nature. Start is called when you click the play button the first time. Think of it like an initialization. Okay? An update is called once per frame. So if I was going to show you how this works. Remember, I told you, it's just a component. So I can right click here, and I can say create an empty. I'm going to call this manager. It's just it. That's it. It's a container. It's an empty project. Empty container. I'm going to drag this floor manager over here. It's just adding a component. And there's the player input one. So I want to link this ball. This ball is a game object, so when I go over here, it will link. If I try to add anything else that's not a game object, it will not let me link it. Okay, so if I go to Window, General, Console, this is another screen, which right here. I'm going to hit play, and you'll see I have Hello World right there. And it fired once. If I were to take this Hello World and I said all Hello World, because it's happening every frame, this is just going to scroll by. Let me just hit pause. So it says Hello World, because that started, and then every frame after, that's happening. So what do we mean by every frame? Depending on the resolution and the hertz of your refresh rate of your monitor, that's how fast something can run. If your monitor can only support a resolution and a refresh rate of 60, the fastest the system can display something is 60 frames per second. So even though you may hear the video card can support 2,000 FPS, which sounds incredible. That means everything should be buttery smooth. If your monitor cannot support more than 60, it's going to cap out at 60. So if I were to look at this, and I were to count how many times this was happening, I believe my monitors are 59.9 or something of that nature. There should be around 59 messages for every second that passes. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I need to get some player input. So I'm going to say if, and I'm going to say key code, input.get key down. Get key down. And I'm going to do key code we'll say the letter A, okay? And then I'm going to say debug.log player has hit A. And then I will do, because we want to have left and right. So I'm going to say S to go left. And then we're going to say, and this is going to be release. Okay, so this is happening in the update. So every update, it's polling the input system to find out if there's a get key down event happening, and it's comparing it to the key code.a, .s, and .w. If that's a true statement, it will print out these debug statements. And the debug is only set out to the console, which is what this is. So let's clear this, hit play. Okay, so I'm going to give focus to my game. I'm going to hit A. Oh, I hit A. I hit S. I hit S. And I hit W. Now, it's only happening when I hit it down. What I mean by that is, if I clear this out and I hit A once and hold it down, it's only going to show me one A because I said get key down. Otherwise, I could say get key. And when I get key, that means it's constantly checking. So if I do get key, I don't have to keep tapping the button each time. So here I'm going to hold down A, and you'll see a whole bunch of A's, and then I hit S, and then I hit W. But with the W, I only want to release once. So the whole purpose is A is going to move it left, S is going to move it right, and key W is going to release the ball to let it fall to see if I can get into my my channel at the bottom. So I'm going to say get key down. Okay, so what I need to do now is I've done this, I need to move the game object ball by something. So we're going to say ball, and now because I have a reference to the game object, if you remember in Unity, the game object is a container that holds a bunch of components, as I should, and by default there's always the transform component. I can say ball dot transform dot position. Okay, I can go plus equals, I don't know, 0.1f. Actually, I want to go minus because I want to go left. Okay, it's like, okay, why is it giving me an error? It's because a position is going to require what's called a vector 3. And it says right there, vector 3.transport. So what I need to do is I need to get the current position and then subtract it. So I'm going to say vector 3, and I'm going to get the current position, which is ball dot transform dot position minus 0.1 f, and then I'm going to say, actually, there we go. So I'm going to do dot x, dot y, and dot z. Yes. Oh, missing the semicolon. Okay, now I don't know the speed of how fast this is going to happen, so I'm going to hold down scene view. I know where my ball is. I'm going to hit play. Yep, so when I hit A, you see the ball moves over to the left. Okay, which is good. So the concept of that works. So we're going to go right, and I'm going to add to my position here. Now the last thing is the rigid body. If you remember, I showed you in the ball, I had a rigid body of use gravity turned on. We're going to uncheck that for just this moment. Okay? So when I hit play, the ball does not automatically fall down. If I hold down the A or S key, oh, I didn't save it. If I hold down the S key, it will move back and forth. So I'm also going to want to get a reference to the rigid body. Okay, so I'm basically making the same reference to the same game object, but I'm specifically pointing to a component of that game object. So my ball gravity, I come down here and I say ball gravity dot use gravity equals true. And this is only going to fire once. I'm going to save this code, come over here. It's going to reload the assemblies. I have to make sure I go to my floor manager, drag this ball there, and as you see, I got the game object symbol for the ball and the rigid body. So now I hit play, and I can use my A and S key, get it to where I think it's going to be, and hit W, and it's going to fall. Now, we've been doing this from the scene view. Let's go ahead and see if we can get the camera view working here. So, what we want to do is you have a couple ways to actually manipulate the axis of how things are going to be moving. In this case, I can choose local or global, and based upon the pivot or center, I am going to just grab this axis and pull straight back until I see the bottom channel. I might bring it down a little bit and come back. That looks pretty good. So there's my world view. I'm going to save it. So I'm going to move, I'm using my A and S key. I'm going to say, let's just try putting it there, hit my W, and let it fall. Very good. Now, the last thing I we want to go over is collisions, as in when you do a collider, whether it's a box or sphere or mesh, you can specify what you want to have happen to it. So in this case, I'm going to create a game object, 3D object, and a cube. So there's my cube. You will see by default it has a transform, as a mesh filter, and that's basically the geometry of the cube, a mesh render, and this is how it's viewed in the camera. If I turn this off, it's still there. You just can't see it in the camera view because you said, hey, basically, don't take any lighting source, don't take any material. Basically, it's here, but it's not, okay? This green outline signifies the collision. In this case, it's a box collider. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to drag this right about there. I was too far down. Okay, let's bring that up a little bit. I want to fit in each one of these. I guess I can rotate it just for funsies. I could just take this entire floor, copy that, paste that rotation, so it's exactly the same alignment. We were going to want to scale it a little wider so the ball cannot fall down the side and not get hit. So here I'm going to say 1. 2, Control D. Basically, I'm making sure it doesn't hit the sides here. 3, oops. Control D. 4, 5, and 6. Okay. So I'm going to select all these, and I'm going to turn off the mesh render. So the boxes are still there, just the visibility of the rendering is not happening in either the scene view or the game view. Okay, so now I can go ahead and put, should create a points manager. Points, we'll just call it points. So with points, we can have what we want to be the points. So we're going to say, we'll just say they're an integer, points value. Well, point value equals 0. Okay, now as I'm, sure.
So we have a question for you, James, out of YouTube. Mr. Ursus says, I'm having a 3D problem. Is there any way I can slow down my momentum in the air?
Like you're jumping and you have an apex that you want to come back down? I think is the question. You can change in that, depending on what you're using, whether it's a rigid body or a physics material, you can actually manipulate those to have like wind effects. So if you want to jump up into the air and you slowly go up to your apex and then you accelerate down, that's all part of the rigid body system. And the rigid body system is you can change the mass, you can change the friction, which sounds like what you're going to be doing. If you have it with a 3D object, like a ball or a character jumping, that's one of the things that I would look at first. Yeah, I would probably have to see it. I'm kind of a visual person when it comes to that. Let me finish this real quick. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a private void on trigger enter. So in Unity, you have two types of triggers. You have an on trigger enter. You have we have three: on trigger enter, on trigger stay, on trigger exit. So when you have the trigger is like a rigid body has hit something, and it will send off an event. In this case, I'm going to say debug.log. I have been hit. Okay. Now I'm going to select all these and drag points. So points should be, I did it the wrong way. So points is there. I can point there, point there, point there, point there, point there. So each of these has a point value onto it. And what I can do, in this case, I'm just going to type in 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, and 60. Yeah, I know. We're just showing proof of concept here. So I'm going to save this, hit play. I'm going to use my A and S key. Let me put it, hit W. So what we're looking for, something should register when it hits the bottom. That's probably going to be 60. Okay, so the ball is actually in the air. Why is the ball in the air? Because I asked for a trigger, and this is set for a collider. Okay, so I turn it to trigger. You'll see I have been hit. So I have to choose all these and set these to triggers. That signifies why the rigid body is going to collide with the box collider. Okay, and it says I have been hit. If I double click on that, that's where it's at. So here, I'm actually going to say, you have scored. Yeah, you have scored blank points. Now the other thing is, as I showed you at the beginning with this 2x3, if you really want to see it full screen, what you can do is move your mouse over here, hold down Shift and holding down Shift, hit spacebar, and this is what's called full screen mode. Okay, so I'm going to hit play. I'm going to use my A and my A and S key, put it there, hit W, let it fall. Look at that. And it says right here, you have scored 60 points. Now if I did this again, let's just start over on this side. I want to score something besides 60. That looks promising. That's probably 20. Yep, I have scored 20 points. So that's a real quick and easy way to go through essentially all the basics of Unity. There are a plethora of different things you can do in here. They have their own world creation, they have their own animation system, they have their own sound effect system. Unity is everything that you need to build an entire world type system. And a lot of the things that you can do, that you can dream up of, you can go to Window, and it's called Asset Store. Now, starting with 2020, point 1, they have removed the Asset Store from inside Unity. And they actually have it on a web page now. So you can go here. So think of an asset store as how I just went ahead and created those scripts and the objects, the game objects, to create that system. Some people have went ahead and created this system already for you and allows you to download and install these packages and run it, and just run it using something that's already been pre-generated. As an example, top downloads right here. I just clicked on this. I went to the assetstore.unity.com. I don't know why it's waiting for an ad in Europe, but okay. So here are some top downloaded assets. Okay, Skybox Series free. Let's just go ahead and add this to my assets. I'm accepting that. Here's a free platform game, but I want to look for something like we'll grab this Uni-Chan model. So it's thinking. I'm going to say add to my assets, accept. And you'll see here, open in Unity. So now I can open this in Unity, open the Unity editor, which I already have open. It will open up something called the Package Manager. Okay, when you open up the Package Manager, you'll see the Uni-Chan model, and it has the ability to download. When you download this, it only downloads it to your computer, but not your project. Okay, so think of it stored somewhere on your computer, like where your photos are or something of that nature. It's just stored there. It has no reference to your project at all until you import. So when I click import, that means, hey, I want to take this package that I've downloaded and unzip it essentially into the system. In this case, it's going to create a folder called Uni-Chan. I'm going to say all, and then import. So it's going to do all this. And these are all the files associated with this package. In this case, a WAV file is a sound file, an FBX is usually a model file, a .mat file, or PNG is a texture file that's associated, which is what you see.
While it's unpacking that, the PlayOnCon people have been appreciating it and following along. Wes has said, thank Jesus for me. That was great. Not Jesus, James, LOL. So I didn't know you auto-corrected to Jesus, but c'est la vie.
C'est la vie. Here I'm going to open up this. I have not been in this package before, so I'm going to click Art, Models, Uni-Chan, drag up. There she is. So I can take her and literally drag her right into my scene. Okay? And now if I really wanted to, I could probably spin her around. You saw I just downloaded this. I'm going to scale her up a little bit. And then if I really wanted to, maybe I could put a box collider around her and have her, when she gets hit, she makes some kind of audio noise, which was here. I have all these different sounds of hers. Okay. So it doesn't just have to be these pegs. I can have her moving around. So let me just hit play and see if she's animated. She is not at this second. That has to do with this controller. Let me see. Unity AR pose? What does that do? Oh, as you see, she's animated. So she went to that pose. And apparently that pose allowed her to just basically stand there. So I can go to different animations. But you see, anything that you see in the Unity Asset Store, you can either purchase, or they have a lot of free ones that you can just pull right into your system. And that has been a lifesaver. I think one of the other ones that I did just a moment ago was skyboxes. Let me see if I go to my window, package manager. Now these are all my assets that I've purchased. There are 606 apparently. I really like it. So if I go to sort, purchase date. I guess that was the long time ago. Let's look for purchase date recently. Skybox series. I'm going to say download. Usually skyboxes are pretty heavy for their size. Essentially, a skybox is just 6 different images. Think of yourself in a large cube with 4 walls, a ceiling, and floor. Sometimes they have it in spheres. I'm going to import these. I'm going to import. This should go by semi-quickly. Oh, it's HDR. This may take a little bit. Well, while we're decompressing, any other questions or statements or concerns?
Let's take another stab at Mr. Earth's question about slowing down momentum in the air. I want to jump to not travel super far. Hold on, there's more. Talk about adjusting gravity. Ursa said, I tried that, but it makes it not able to jump high enough. Like, if there's something to do when it's grounded, it travels faster than when it is in the air. So you can set different speeds at different, I don't want to say altitudes, at different places. I mean, you can set a flying speed different than a run speed, for instance.
Well, yes, and the code that you want to use for that, let me see if I can pull this up. So Unity has a plethora of different tutorials and such. One of the ones that you have in their API script is called add force. Yeah, rigid. Well, I didn't really want to go here, but the point is, if you go to the Unity's API and then look up add force, so what happens is you want to do basically force accelerating and decelerating over time. There is a rigid body.add force, so when you jump, you're going to want to apply a force. Okay, let's see if I can make my way to the. I want the API. This is where I want to be. Okay, so instead of, depending on how you're having your character or your 3D object move, you may want to just do an add force. And you want a force in the, if it's up, my guess would be the Y direction. And you want to apply a quick burst of force. So like I would do a get key down. In fact, I might be able to do this right now. Since we have rigid body.add force, let me see if I can get to my script. Yes, it's been remodified. Let's see if I can do player input. Let's try something here for you. Since I have a reference to my rigid body here, I'm going to want to pick, I don't know, space. So I'm going to say jump. And I'm going to say add force. And it's going to be equals new vector 3. I'm going to say 0, 1, 0. How is this? Oh, that's just, I call it. Okay, let's put my F's in here just to be on the safe side. Let's just try something. And we're going to close this. I'm going to create a new plane. It's probably not what I want to do. And I want to take my ball. Bring my ball down. What I can cheat and go here. Make that a child. 0, 0, 0. Now it's in the center. Bring that up a little bit. Focus down. So when I hit play, it should fall just a little bit. Oh, that's right, because I have the... Hang on. No, that's right. I got gravity turned off. 1 second. Okay, now if I hit spacebar... It says jump. I am obviously not doing that part right. And force mode. Oh, that's right, because it's in a fixed update. Here we go. We're actually just going to copy that. So a fixed update is a function that runs kind of like update, but it's based upon the rigid body. It's asking for the rigid body. I'm going to say here. And the thrust is how much you want to jump by. This is going to be a float. I'm pretty sure it's going to be a float. So let's go up here. We'll just say public float. That. And input button get jump. In this case, I'm going to do. I can do this still same thing. Let's go ahead and delete this from the input. Transform.up. And I don't want it to be this transform up. I want it to be the balls transform up. So I need to, and this transform right here is going to be the component transform. So we want to use the ball. So it's ball.transform.up. Yes. That all looks pretty good. Let's save that. Come back over to Unity. Pardon me. I don't need to make that a child anymore. I don't feel that it's running. Huh. Oh, I know why. Because we didn't set a thrust. Hold on. If I go back to the floor manager, we got to give it a thrust. Let's give it, I don't know, 5. 500? There we go. Something like that. So I have a thrust and it reaches an apex and comes down. Well, looks like it's good. I guess due to the mass, it's got to be kind of big. So if I put in 500, I saw it work a second ago.
It's a mess.
I'm pretty sure I saw it work a second ago.
Yep.
Whoops. Okay. That kind of made a bullet out of it.
Yeah, so Mr. Ursons was wondering about changing the apex. Now we see more thrust, that apex changes. Mr. Ursons says, so this will increase fall rate, but not affect jump height. The thrust will give you the jump height.
Yes.
The rest will give you the fall rate.
And you can change that with the angular drag. So in other words, you can jump up faster, and then you float down like a feather if that's what you wanted to do. And you would do that with the angular drag.
Angular drag. I think I saw that performance at Backstreet back in the day. But
yeah, that could be it too.
Folks. So unfortunately, I've tuned out now. They had to go to a different section.
Yeah, here it is. How much air resistance affect your object when rotating
that
fork?
Looks like it should solve the issue. Very good stuff, James. The folks at PlayOnCon thanked you greatly. Apparently, they were definitely enjoying it. So I didn't know how many would be in the theater. Apparently, they had a good crowd for it in their theater.
Well, good.
For their next session. Well, for their time, 5 hours. So.
Sounds like a winner. Well, I'm hoping everybody learned something. And like I said, Unity is just one of those engines that I've just fallen in love with. I've used many different engines over the years. But this one has everything. Has the world editor, has an animator, has a sound editor or sound manager, so you can do your audio ducking. It just has everything in it. You never really have to leave it. Even now, they have a thing called Pro Builder, in which you can actually build your own worlds, and to a point, almost like modeling inside Unity. So you don't have to use Blender or Maya or Max or any other kind of third-party tools. And the asset store is a plethora of things that you can download to enhance all your games.
Yeah, we had a conversation on 3DS Studio Max while you were demoing the early parts of the Pachenko game. Mr. Earth.
I actually I started on 3DS 3D Studios R4. It was on 3 floppy disk, and it was auto. That wasn't Autodesk. Kinetic.
Yeah, I started when it was Kinetic back in the mid.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I started in '94 modeling. That's correct.
A couple years
and
before me, I think.
The first thing I modeled was, of course, an X-wing and a TIE fighter.
Mr. Earth, I think I figured it out or not. Sorry, I'm not sure what you're saying there, Mr. Earth.
Well, you can always shoot me an email, james@drunity.com. I'd be more than happy.
The cell block one, isn't that?
That's fine.
And it's james@drunity.com?
That's correct. And the word doctor is spelled out DOCTOR, unity.com.
I think we got it figured out. Mr. Ursus, we have other Unity demos in our GGDA playlist. If you want to hang on for another minute, I'll go ahead and grab them. James, do you want to go ahead and share some of the games you've recently been working on?
Well, recently, yes. So there's a program called RubeWorks, RUBE Works. That is an application that is going to be in VR. It's based upon a Rube Goldberg machine. And you can find it here. It's also currently on Steam, the 2D version of it. So Rube Goldberg is a inventor that basically creates these really complex scenarios to do something simple. In this case, to make orange juice. Fresh orange juice, you have to put all this stuff together. And there's lights and strings and everything happens, and then at the end, you have a orange juice at the end. Let me go ahead and turn this down. But essentially, you have symbols hitting this orange juice, which is putting orange juice into the cup. So that's coming out here shortly for the Quest 2. I also have Cutthroat Caverns, which is Cutthroat Caverns is based upon a card game by a company called Smirk and Dagger. And a real quick scenario of it is you have these cards and you're basically playing against other people. Paizo, which is a company that creates Pathfinder. I've created some initialization trackers that you can use if you're the DM or if you're a player. It's really handy when you're trying to pay attention and you're looking through a book and the DM wants to get your attention. What else is there? And there are a couple point-and-click adventure games that will be coming out very near future for Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo Switch.
Very cool.
So, yes.
All right.
And then whatever Andrew throws my way.
We've shared the playlist. Lots of good stuff there, Dr. Unity. Thanks to all of you who joined us today. Thanks to PlayOnCon for having us. Remember, cellblockstudios.com. Remember to subscribe to this channel for more great game development videos. And we will see you some other time. James, say goodbye.
Bye, everybody. Take care. Have fun.